course, a learning experience. He'll be back in these types of tournaments in future. The players are waiting the gong to start the round, Tanya. The tradition in Wijk is for a dignitary or special guest to start with a gong and the handshakes. Look, yeah, he's playing a wounded beast though in Arjun. And this position, very interesting. I really love, I've got to say, Arjun's last move, jumping into the center, trying to trade knights, because as you mentioned, I nearly did it again. As you mentioned, Tanya, I'm so sorry. As you mentioned, Tanya, the bishop pair, they normally come to life. They normally start to gain an influence. The later the game goes on, the more exchanges there are. So, okay, action replay.
You can call me Ivanka as many times as you want. No problem at all on that. Be the hair though. But yes, let's do an action replay. You mentioned this started as the Nimzo Indian, and usually that leads to some sort of fireworks, but I believe this is the E3 system by White in the Nimzo, which means it's going to be more of a positional grind, which perhaps suits Nodirbek a little more than Arjun.
Yeah, you would think that, right? And on paper I would agree, but the position we get, so it did arise from the Nimzo Indian. This pin, often there's several ways of dealing with it. You can allow your pawns to be wrecked, as some players prefer to do, to play dynamically instead, or you can play the positional approach. And you mentioned a positional game. This is Arjun's choice. He's saying, you can always take me. I might even force you, compel you to take me by pushing my pawn up, losing a move there. But I will always recapture with the queen, maintain my nice pawn structure, take the bishop pair, and long-term doing well. D6 is known to be a very fighting move. The top players, if they want to equalize immediately, they often just castle or they play the move d5, fight for the center. And instead, d6 allows White to gain space. You mentioned this e3 move, not ambitiously pushing forward 2 squares, but just aiming to get pieces out first. And a few moves down the line, it was Black giving up the bishop pair. Very interesting, he did it willingly, I was going to say, Tanya. Normally you wait for a3 to happen before you take this knight. I don't know if he was worried about the knight running away and leaving the bishop looking a bit silly, but either way, bishop takes c3, a bit of a surprising decision to me. And after queen to e7, Black is ready to strike in the center, try to push the pawn forward, some forks on the mind. But after a capture, knight e5, that's no longer possible. Bishops, you're enjoying Arjun's chances here.
Yes, and for Black, it's not just looking at Arjun's bishops, right? The problem of the bishop on c8 as well needs to be solved. And that bishop really belongs for Nodirbek on the long diagonal, one way or the other. You want to either trade, move the knight away, push b6, put that bishop on b7 as you're highlighting, and, well, at least create your own chances on being a sniper towards that white king. Meanwhile, for Arjun as well, that bishop on c1, it looks blocked, but once it gets on b2, lined up with the queen already, you can look at ideas on Black's king side. I do like the bishop pair with the d3 bishop and potentially the b2 bishop, once again just targeting the other side of the board. Knight e5, first question to
and the bishop pair coming to life later on. Just
so many twists and turns. Sorry, David.
No, just a great display from Arjun.
Yes. And I was just saying, just when it felt like Nodirbek has made a comeback into the game and then suddenly another turnaround. David, do you think he's going to fight on, or is this the moment we see the handshakes? And how does he even fight on?
I don't think he can. That's the problem. I mean, literally everything works against him. White's idea of just queen to g3 and taking this pawn. For example, I was looking at queen to h1. It looks like, you can dive in behind. But queen to h1 is met by white dropping back the queen. Then check, stopping any threats. If the black king takes the white bishop, then queen takes f3. Check, force the queens off the board. It's always, all roads lead to Rome right now. All roads lead to that king and pawn endgame with white having the extra e-pawn and winning the game.
That's a fantastic line that you pointed out, because if not for queen g3, queen h1 would keep the game alive for Nodirbek. Queen g2, queen e2 checkmating ideas would not give. That's it. Would not give the time to fight, and there is a resignation on the board as Nodirbek knows this is all over. Nothing to save him from that lost king pawn ending, and Arjun Erigaisi scores his first ever win at the Tata Steel Masters.
Wow, for Arjun, it must be a sigh of relief. The curse is broken. 25th attempt at a victory in the Tata Steel Masters section, and he finally gets the win. Finally heading back where he feels he belongs in the 2800 club. The player's now analysing some variations, some key moves, and Arjun ultimately saw all the key moves when necessary. That queen c2 move, keeping everything under control when it looked like things were turning, Tanya. So